I'm not sure what to call this soap. I've seen other people make it on YouTube, and I've made it and I like it, but it doesn't seem to have a name as far as I can tell. It's a lot like a corner pour, except that you use a loaf mold and you slant the mold and then pour the consecutive colors down the side of the mold. And so, as is true in a corner pour, each new color pushes the previous colors in front of it, but it's not going into the corner, it's going down the side of the mold. So in any case, it's a pretty soap. For this soap, I'm going to be using clays as my colorants plus some indigo. So for red, I've got about half a teaspoon of French red clay with about a quarter teaspoon of Australian red reef clay. And then for orange, it doesn't look very orange now, but it will when the soap is made. It's a little under a teaspoon of French red clay. For yellow, about half a teaspoon of Brazilian gold clay. For green, about 3/4 of a teaspoon of French green clay. And then for blue, I have about 3/4 of a teaspoon of white kaolin clay and around a quarter teaspoon of indigo powder. And then for white, I'm using almost a teaspoon of white kaolin clay. I'm not going to show the actual mixing of the batter this time because I've done that in other videos and it goes exactly the same way. So these are already mixed, and I'm going to do red, green, orange, white, blue, and yellow in that order. And I'm going to be pouring just down I've got this, I don't know how well it shows on the camera, but the mold is slanted at probably a 30-degree angle. So I'm going to pour it so that the batter can slide down the side. And then each new color will just kind of gently push the previous color ahead of it. This batter's at very light trace. It's just hardly tracing at all, but it's not quite totally non-viscous liquid. I'm again using blood orange fragrance from Nature's Garden, which I really like the smell of, and it doesn't discolor, it doesn't accelerate, it's just a very well-behaved fragrance. This is a 50-ounce mold from Essential Depot. So there's the first round. Pouring very cleanly. I'm getting hardly any mixing of one color into another. Go a total of 4 rounds. So I'm going to use a little more than half of what's left this time. And I'm going to start removing my props here. Doesn't need to slant that much anymore. my last prop. I'm going to use it all up this time. I use these solo cups because they're lower volume. I happen to have them, but I'm liking this because the little bit of a lip on the solo cup kind of hooks onto the mold wall and it allows you to make a very straight pour. I like that. I haven't even thought about that before. It's putting the batter exactly where I want it. Thickening quite a lot now, so I want to get this done in kind of a hurry. It's still pouring all right, but definitely thickening up. Okay, so that is done pouring. I'm going to use I don't know whether to use the thick or the thin end of a chopstick. I guess I'll use the thick end. I go at about 1/2 inch intervals here for swipes. Same thing the other way at about 1/2 inch intervals. And I think I'll do some spirals. This may get too busy, I don't know. I like the tight swirl on this. I think that's really nice. It is the next day and this soap is ready to cut. So I'll just loosen the sides and then push gently on the bottom, and usually it pops loose. There it goes. It should slide right out. sides from the pour. I'm going to cut this with a wire cheese cutter. I'm not going to measure it, I'm just going to kind of guess at the size. Actually, there are two ways you can cut a soap like this. Take just the edge off here. I could cut it into big slices that look like slices of bread. That makes kind of a strange but very homemade looking shaped bar of soap. So there's one of those, and that's a pretty pattern. But something I like to do better is cut that the width of a bar that I'm going to want. And then this is the top surface, cut parallel to that, so you end up with two bars with, in essence, a top surface. And that should show a similar swirling pattern. Let me cut the fuzzy stuff off the very top surface of the top bar. So that gives two nice swirl patterns there. I'll do close-ups of these a little later. So I'm going to do, I think, the bars that way. I really prefer those, even though this is a nice look. I don't like the shape of that bar as well. So this is the slice that was done as if it were a slice of bread, going the whole vertical length of the mold. I like the pattern there. I don't particularly like that shape or size for a bar of soap. But it's kind of interesting. On the other hand, the sliced ones where I cut a wider bread slice, if you will, and then cut horizontally through those. This is the top, and then the sides have that nice pattern that the bread slice would look like. This was the top piece, so it's set this way in the mold. This was the very top. This is the middle where I slice it again. So you get two of those nice surfaces. That was at the end. And then the other piece that came off of there, this was the mold floor, but here's the top of that one. So again, I think that's quite attractive, and it has the pretty sides to it. So there's a so I've just sliced the kind of rough top surface off to make that look a little better. I think that makes a very pretty bar of soap. That's the mold wall side.